Hi, everybody. Welcome. It is another week, and we are talking about Vesta. This time, I'm going to take you through the houses and the signs. So make sure to get your notebook so that you can take some notes. This will be a really good talk that will feel really personal for you. If you do not have my Astrology is a Superpower book, you can get it. There's a link below if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on Star Narratives, the podcast, go to my website. You can find it. If you're listening on the podcast, this will be followed by the astrology forecast of the week. And if you're watching on YouTube, that is called The Path Ahead and it gets released every Monday. So I've got lots of content and I'm still going through my sun signs, re-releasing them on YouTube. So all of you that were with me through 2024, hi, on the podcast, I'm re-releasing all of those teachings edited on YouTube. So you can come find me there if you want a refresher on these archetypes, because, these archetypes are threaded through our daily lives and there's so much to learn. And that's what I love about astrology. And I always say this when I'm doing readings with people is the information is always dynamic. None of the information is stagnant. It does not stay the same. It has the same themes and the same baselines, of course, but depending on what's going on in your life and your spiritual development, the information is going to land differently and you're going to hear different things and come away with different golden nuggets. So, of course, if you want to book a private reading with me or you want to join a mentorship, my Astro cohort is full. I will be doing another Astro cohort in the fall, so you can keep an eye out for that. You can ponder if that sounded good this time and it wasn't the right time for you. And let's jump into Vesta. So we have gone through 3 weeks of the archetype of Vesta. This is an asteroid that can hold a lot of power in your chart at different times of your life. And over the last 3 weeks, we've talked about that flame that we want to connect in with. It's that driving force. And it's not the part of us that feels like we are compulsively needing to do something. It's not the part of us that's driven by our inner critic that says, you got to go out, you got to make changes, you have to change the world, you have to do something about this problem. No, this inner flame is a solid, strong, steady flame that we would do well to connect in with because it gives us guidance. It gives us to sit and tune into the divine flow of information. Imagine when you're sitting around a bonfire and just watching the flames dance. There's a magical quality to it. So we've been going through all of these different versions of inner flame, how to make a pact with yourself to tune out distractions, to say no to your desires that might carry you away from your flame. We also talked about using that flame to dive into a potency and a power and bring something new into the world that just belongs to you, that is just for you. So this week we're going to go through Vesta signs and houses. So you can look at the Vesta in your chart. The Vesta glyph looks like a flame. If you are watching on YouTube, I'm going to show it to you. Otherwise, you can just Google it. And if you want to figure out where Vesta lands in your natal chart, you can go to a site like astro.com. You'll have to pull down extended chart selection and then choose Vesta. So you'll see where it lands in your chart, and where it lands, sign and house, gives you a lot of information about the quality of your inner temple, your inner flame, because I talked about in a previous episode, imagine a temple. And a temple can look like anything. It can look like a circle of trees in the forest where the dappled sunlight sprinkles down onto the forest, where you sit peacefully and just listen to the sounds of nature. It can look something grand like a church with stained glass windows and organ music. It can be like a temple in Thailand where there's incense in the air and bowls of lotus flowers chanting in the background. We all have a version of a temple that can be really helpful for us to go into. And not everybody is going to be attracted to the same temple. This is when we're talking about our connection to God, source energy, universe, true nature, the divine flow. We all have a slightly different version, what we relate to. And I always give that caveat. It's like whatever makes the most sense to you, that's what you go with. So we're going to go through the signs and the houses and give you a sense of This is the temple that your higher self chose. These are the aspects that your higher self wants for you to remember. This is where your higher self wants you to go when you're feeling stressed, when you've lost connection, when you want to bring something magical, beautiful, powerful, potent into the world and you're having a hard time starting. Before I start talking about Vesta through the signs and the houses, I just want to say don't fast forward just to get to your sign and your house. Look at this like there are nuggets of wisdom that you can pull from every single sign and house. And there's benefit in listening to all of them. You don't have to take notes, but just listening and being aware of the parts of these archetypal temples that appeal to you. Just because your Vesta isn't in the fifth house, you might relate to some of the fifth house stuff. And that might be because you have planets in the fifth house, or you have a chart that has a big focus on the sun of coming to know yourself. So these teachings aren't meant to be totally piecemeal, where Vesta in Pisces is the only one for you. This is where you're just listening for the information and you're making the connections and you're letting your higher self light up the pieces of information in the teachings that resonate with you, that you can take some wisdom and knowledge from. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I have slides here. If you're listening on the podcast, feel free to jump onto YouTube at some point if you want to make notes about your particular Vesta. But in the meantime, let's just go through it. And before we start, just go ahead and take a deep breath and get centered into the present moment. And I've asked you in a previous episode to get a sense of where your flame lives. For some of us, it lives in our heart or our solar plexus, in our sacrum, in our root chakra. For some of us, it feels like it's in our throats or even in our third eye. And it does not matter where your flame is. This is just where do you start when you want to connect in with your divinity? So this is Vesta in Aries and the first house. And this is the house where we're talking about identity. This is a firehouse. This is where it's really important that you are able to see yourself clearly. So Vesta is reminding you always that seeing yourself clearly, looking at how you perceive yourself, not getting caught up in how others perceive you, but getting really clear about the things that scare you, the places where you have a hard time with boundaries, the places where you have this fire, this raw instinct, this passion. This is where Vesta brings you to examine this, to get clear on your boundaries. And one of the ways to access anything that has to do with Aries, Mars, or the first house is through movement, through taking action, through taking action in solitude, where you're running alone or you're hiking alone, you're getting your heart rate up to allow that energy to flow. And as that energy is flowing, the stagnation is leaving, and that's when you get the clarity. So you are learning in your temple how to trust your gut. Those are the teachings of this particular Aries first house temple. And I should say, whether your Vesta is in the sign of Aries or in the first house, this will be relevant for you. This is also where you are learning how to claim your desires and really allow that flame to guide you into a self-expression that is uniquely you. When we're looking at the first house, a lot of times we can get pulled by how other people perceive us and the self-expression that others wish for us to have. And so this is an energy where in order to access that sacred flame, you really have to get clear on what you want and what your desires are and what your passion and purpose is. All right. And if you have Vesta in Taurus or in the second house, this is a sanctuary. This is a sanctuary of the senses. This is a temple that might be out in the middle of the forest. This is a temple where when you need to connect in with your sacred flame, you want to go somewhere where you are connected to the land, to nature. You are able to tune into your senses. If you've ever taken classes with me, I talk a lot about the sensual nature of Taurus and how we have to learn to come into the present moment through tuning into our senses. How does something smell? How does it taste? How does it feel against the skin? Because when we are engaging in those practices and taking note instead of just going on autopilot, it will connect us quickly into that sacred flame. And so this is a Vesta Taurus second house thing. We are learning how to prioritize self-worth and how to really get into finding what nourishes us. We are tuning into the sacredness of the physical world. And, I'll say a bit of commentary on current events. There's a lot that pulls us out of the sacredness of the physical world. It reminds me, I was having a conversation with somebody and they were very worked up about politics. As I'm sure many of you have a lot of people, and you might be the person in your life that is worked up about politics. And he also said at the same time, there's so many miracles happening. There are these sweet animals, there's beauty everywhere. There are miracles regardless of what's happening around us. And that's one of the lessons of Vesta and Taurus is we're finding that sacred flame and we are reminding ourselves of the miracle of being in physical form, of having the ability to taste and touch, which we don't have in form of the spirit. So if you have Vesta and Taurus or the second house and you're feeling disconnected or you're ready to bring something new into the world, you can literally take a bath. You can run your hands along the bark of a tree. All of these things help bring you into the physical and help you to come back to that divine flame. All right, so Vesta in Gemini in the third house. Words are very important here. You might be somebody that gets a lot of connection by talking to people. You're somebody that might get more deeply connected with yourself through words, through reading books, through having conversations with people. You might be somebody that the temple is in the mind. It requires mental processing. It requires a conversation back and forth with somebody to help you get clarity about what your answer is or what your direction is. It's also really important with this placement that you're cultivating your flame by allowing yourself to roam freely, by allowing your mind to go to many different places. You're not getting stuck on a certain idea. We all know the feeling, whether we've been in a church or in nature or in a temple or listening to some sort of spiritual teaching, where we might go into that room feeling tired, frustrated, exhausted, and the energy of the community, the energy of the building that we're in shifts something for us. It turns something on in our mind. It sparks an idea. It brings us into a new perception. And that's part of what Vesta and Gemini in the third house is all about. This is also a house where you want to use your voice. You could sing to yourself in the car, in the shower. You can, again, have conversations with people. And there's an element of curiosity here as well. So you might have the kind of temple where you go in and you want to walk around and look at everything. And you want to walk over to the incense and wave it around your nose so that you can really smell it. You want to look up at the skylight, at the way that the light comes in and makes shadows on the floor. This is a Vesta that says, if I am feeling lost and disconnected, or I want to bring something new into the world, I have to talk about it. I have to explore it. I have to bounce my ideas off of other people so that I can get some clarity about what's right for me. If your Vesta is in Cancer or the fourth house, this is a very private temple. This is a temple of refuge where it's you and only you. This isn't like Gemini. This isn't necessarily about conversating with people or going out into the world to explore different options. This is you coming back to yourself, you creating a temple that, like it says here, a womb-like retreat. This is where you are creating a place where you don't have to worry about somebody knocking on the door or answering the phone. You don't have to hold your body in a state of expectation. Rather, you can fully relax You can be comfortable. This is a temple that needs to be very comfortable, a temple where you can sift through your old memories and your old experiences, and you can make different kinds of connections around your history, around your lineage, around the things that have happened to you in the past, so that you can really connect in with your deeper emotions and get a deeper understanding. Like think about a pond or a lake, and the first inch or two of the water is really warm. It's because the sunlight is hitting that water all day long. But the deeper you go down, the colder the water gets, the darker it gets. And so there is something about the archetype of Cancer in the fourth house that's similar to that, where we have to spend some time. We have to go down into the depths to really feel into the quality of the lake. And this reminds me, my grandparents had a lake house in Connecticut, and my family and I would go there from the time I was little, and the lake was so beautiful. The water was green, and the water shifted shades of green the deeper you went. This is the temple. It's the ability to feel the different layers of temperature in the water or in your emotions. It's where you want to see the shades of color changing the deeper you go. And so, of course, we're talking about emotions and how important it is to tune into your emotions when you have a Vesta in Cancer in the fourth house. And anytime we're looking at emotions, we have to ride that emotional wave. Emotions are very rarely just clear and to the point. There's a lot of exploration that has to happen through the layers, the colors, the temperatures of emotion in order to really land on how something feels. So this is how you tap into your sacred flame if you have Vesta in Cancer or the fourth house. And Vesta in Leo in the fifth house, completely different energy. This is fire energy. This is the energy of tuning into your own radiance. This is self-expression. If you are having questions about where to go, what to do, how to create, you have to tune into your artistry. You have to do things that bring that dopamine, that rush, dancing, painting, being unique. Because if you are conforming, or if you are holding yourself back when you have Vesta in Leo or the fifth house, you end up feeling dull, and that flame gets really low and it's unable to dance around like it likes to. There's a lot of playfulness that's required when you have Vesta in Leo. So your temple becomes one where I'm imagining a climbing gym or one of those gymnastics places that we used to go when we were a kid, or a trampoline park. You ride the rope swing into the foam pit. You bounce on the trampolines, you go across the monkey bars. The idea with Vesta and Leo is that you find yourself by being active, by being playful, by being creative. And it's through that creative self-expression that you get your answers, that you come back to yourself, that you figure out what your next move is. And you're really honoring that inner child that wants to be center stage and that wants to be indulged. So, ride all the rides, eat all the cotton candy you want here, because this is what's going to bring you into connection with your sacred flame. Vesta in Virgo in the sixth house. This is, as it says here, the minimalist shrine. One of the things with Vesta in Virgo is that when you have routine and ritual, it can bring you very quickly into that connection with self. So this can look like going to yoga class every day for a week. This can look like dedicating yourself to a long walk along an open space trail. Or even something like, I'm going to wake up and drink hot water with lemon juice to help cleanse. This is where you dedicate yourself to a series of self-care events, and this can help you to connect with yourself. Vesta in Virgo likes organization, and it's important with this archetype that we go into simplicity, because one of the things we do when we have a lot of Virgo in our chart is we get over obligated and then we get exhausted. And so this is the reminder that if you want to channel that sacred energy, you want to come up with some simple and repetitive ways to care for yourself. This would be the kind of temple where you go every morning at 6 a.m. and you just sit in silence. So in many ways, this is the temple of the body, the temple of ritual, the temple of routine, all dedicated to help you tune out all the busyness and tune in to what's really important and what you really need in order to feel that you're caring for yourself in the same way that you care for people. Okay, Vesta in Libra or in the seventh house. This is another air sign. Air signs are relational. So, with all of the air signs, when Vesta is in an air sign or house of Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, third, seventh, or 11th houses, there is going to be a need to connect with other people. Now, when you have Vesta in Libra in the seventh house, this is always about making sacred space for your relationships. And the reason that we do this is because in the seventh house, we come to know ourselves more clearly through our relationships. We all know this, that our relationships have a way of showing us a mirror about who we are and what we do and whether it works for us or not. This is also a placement of beauty where it's very important that your temple feels aesthetic, that it feels good, that you are creating a sense of beauty. So this would be the energy of somebody that when you are not connected to your flame or you are not sure what your next move is, to plan a beautiful lunch with a best friend, to plan to go on a hike with somebody that's near and dear to you. We obviously want to be in relationship when we're trying to connect in with our divine flame, it's really important that we surround ourselves with the people that are the most special to us, that we don't have arguments and issues with, that we feel that we can be ourselves. And, to do it in a very beautiful way, plan to go have a fancy tea at a beautiful restaurant with a best friend, take a long walk by a river with somebody that you love. This can be a way for Vesta in Libra seventh house to re-engage with the flame, to remember the beauty of the world, to remember that they are supported and that they can use relationship to connect in with self and to get those deeper answers that they might be seeking. All right, Vesta in Scorpio in the eighth house. This is another water sign. So with the water signs, we have to go deep into emotions. There's something with this Scorpio eighth house archetype where it's really important to go into the shadow work, going deep. This is where we are unafraid to get raw with ourselves, to be brutally honest, to notice when we have our shadows that are rearing their ugly heads and we're kind of acting out of those shadows. Scorpio is always related to our shadow side. We have things that have happened to us in our lives that have been really hard, that have caused us to go into self-protection. We also have grudges that we hold and old resentments and whatnot that kind of get buried. So Vesta and Scorpio in the eighth is this energy of when you're feeling disconnected from yourself, when you're feeling resentful and annoyed and defensive. This is where you take some quiet time for yourself and you do some shadow work. You do some journaling. You ask your higher self to show you what needs to be transformed. You ask to be shown what needs to leave your life so that you can make room for what is going to come in. Scorpio's connected to death and rebirth. So it's also important that you tap into sensuality. This could look like taking a dance class or spending time in waters, in hot tubs, immersing yourself in waters, hot tubs, the ocean. There's something here about coming back to the physical body, understanding that the deep emotions, the resentments, the irritations, the trauma, the defensiveness, those things take us out of the body. And coming back into the body can feel powerful and deepening. So I might describe this temple as a place where you walk down the stairs and you enter into a dark room that has candles and you can't see much, but there are candles. You can see the candles flickering off of crystals. There's a sacredness, there's a magic and a silence in this temple, and you are there to meditate and to allow the darkness, allow the light of the candles to bring you into some deeper knowledge about who you are and what you're holding on to and what needs to be released. If you have Vesta in Sagittarius or the ninth house, a fire house, so this is a really active, this is getting out into the world. This is spiritual seeking. This can look like I need to find another spiritual teacher, or I need to go explore and meet people that are different from me. There's a lot to learn. This is the temple of I have to broaden my perspective somehow. If you've lost touch with yourself, if you are having a hard time bringing something new out into the world, get out, travel around, read stories about other people who have done something similar to you. Even if all you do is go on a hike that you've never been on in your city, there's something about novelty, about newness that can be really helpful for this placement. You're focusing on your freedom to do what ignites your soul. So there's a lot of fun, there's a lot of energy in this. And this temple looks like a temple of freedom. This might be a temple that is on a hot air balloon. So here you are feeling bored, feeling stagnant, you're disconnected from your flame, and you book a hot air balloon ride. And you're up above your town and you're looking down. There's the exhilaration of being so high up in the air in a sort of dangerous contraption. You're also seeing everything from a very different perspective, and things begin to click. So if this is you, remember, adventure is your friend, novelty is your friend, and you're looking for the kind of temples that remind you of your freedom and of your expansion. Vesta in Capricorn in the 10th house, another earth placement. Similar to Virgo, this is where you go into the temple seeking mastery, the understanding that when you do things systematically, when you keep showing up, that you will eventually become a master. So imagine that you want to learn to meditate and you try it the first time, you only make it 5 minutes. Try it the second time, you make it 10 minutes. Third time, 15 minutes, and so on. This is the nature of a Vesta in Capricorn 10th house person. This is a focus on doing it a little bit better each time, on committing to making it better. If you've lost touch with your flame, if your flame has gone out, if you want to bring something beautiful into the world and you don't know how to start, this is a temple of structure, a temple of dedication. If I was going to describe this, I'm imagining a Buddhist temple. This is the temple where you go in to sit in silence and meditate, even when your foot starts to fall asleep, even when your mind starts to wander and you become bored and you just bring your attention back over and over to what you had originally decided to dedicate yourself to. So while this might not be the most glamorous Vesta, this is a really powerful one because if you can create this dedication, this mastery to this sacred flame, nobody can stop you. You will forever be one of the most powerful people on the planet. All right, Vesta in Aquarius. So again, a relational Vesta. This is important to understand that you're going to get ideas and downloads when you connect with other people. This is a futuristic temple. This is where you get out of your comfort zone and you do things that seem a little bit quirky or a little bit wacky because you know that it's going to help you learn. It's going to help to get you out of the box that you've been in. So your sacred flame has a lot to do with your unique genius. When your flame starts to go out and you start to feel dull, it's probably because you have disconnected from your inner rebel and you have gotten a little bit bored in conforming. So the temple looks like I have to be really different. I have to do something that feels really exciting. This might be like, I'm going to go run a marathon. This is a temple where you are reminding yourself that thinking differently, that being innovative is a really powerful thing for you. I've done a bunch of solar return readings this month for Aquarius, and I keep saying Aquarius people are the ones that are here to change the world. So if you have Vesta in Aquarius or the 11th house, your focus, your divine sacred flame has a lot to do with changing the world and changing the world for the better. No pressure. And finally, Vesta in Pisces in the 12th house. I mean, we love Pisces. Pisces can be very hard to understand, but if your sacred flame is here, it is so connected to learning how to tune into your intuition, to access that intuition through solitude, through meditation, through dream work. One of the big pieces of cultivating this flame when you have this placement is learning to trust and surrender, learning to give yourself over to whatever is going to happen is going to happen. It's not about you needing to get in there and change and do it differently and ensure some different outcome. So if your creative spark has dulled and you feel disconnected with this placement, this is always an indication that you're disconnected from your higher self and from source energy. So going into the temple, any kind of temple for you is going to be about simply connecting in with source. It's that remembering that you are not just a human, that you have a spiritual nature as well, and that you can connect in with the divine field. One of the easiest ways to connect in with divinity is spending time with animals, because you can't help but look into an animal's eyes and see this love reflected back at you, this sweetness of this animal. It's also spending time outside in nature and looking at the beauty, at the intricacy of a flower, looking at how a river just keeps running. How on earth does all of that water just keep coming? So your temple is all about connecting in with the magic that is all around you, never assuming that things are black and white, remembering that the spiritual connection is where you're going to find your temple, where you're going to find your sacred flame. All right, so that concludes Vesta through the houses and signs. And next week, we are going to start in on the asteroid Juno. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you all soon.